right. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
And welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. And my name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts.
My name is Anthony Ihrig, one of the other hosts.
And today we have Charlie Parr joining us. Yay!
Whoa.
Hey, Charlie.
Oh,
And-
how you guys?
Good. And
Good.
looks like you are joining us from your van. Where's your van parked, Charlie?
Well, down by the river, of course.
Ah, of course.
No, my van is actually parked in my mother's driveway in Austin, Minnesota.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, welcome to the party. We're happy
Yes.
to have you here. And it looks like folks are joining us nice and early today. Long Beach, Huntington, such a great musician, all around nice guy, talking about Charlie, I'm assuming. Chris, yeah, it is warm and beautiful here in Minneapolis and in Richfield. And yeah, lots of folks. And then Alan as well joining us from Texas. And Joe listening from Wisconsin Route 24, cruising back from Door County. All right, well, drive safe, Joe.
And
Hopefully you're
welcome
not
all-
drinking and driving. 'Cause,
Yes.
but since I'm sitting in one place and not driving anywhere, and because Charlie Parr's on, I thought in honor of his song Cheap Wine, I'm drinking some cheap wine from the box.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I'm going back to Fort Collins, Colorado, for a little 90 shilling, one of my favorite ales from Odell's.
Nice.
Charlie, we know you're in your van, but are you
In
partaking
my
in any
van,
sort
I
of...
had like 4 pots of coffee already today, so I am on the opposite end of the drinking spectrum now.
Gotcha. Well, so you are fueled up and ready to go. And today we are going to dig back to your 2002 release, Criminals and Sinners, an earlier one, which folks might or might not be familiar with. But for people who maybe are newer to your music, I know you have a lot of big fans that are already tuned in. But for folks who maybe are less familiar, do you want to give us a little brief bio as to how you came to do what you do in music?
Boy. Yeah, well, I've been playing the guitar for most of my life since I was around 8 years old. And in my 30s, I started playing a couple shows here and then. And then eventually, started playing more shows, and then I quit my job about 20 years ago, and now I just play shows and drive around. I've recorded some records and sell those to the people that want to hear them, and get back in the van and keep driving.
Very appropriate that you're there today. Now, how many albums have you put out now, total, would you say?
I don't. I don't know. I think 15.
Okay, and I asked that because I'm curious where the one we're going to listen to today falls in that spectrum.
I view this one as the first one, although I recorded twice before this, real kind of CDR homemade things. This one was the first one that was on any kind of a, this one was the first one that I had help with. Mark Lindquist from Duluth have a tiny label called Shaky Ray Records, and he recorded this and put it out and helped me with it. So that kind of, for me, that makes it more legitimate than the prior two that were before this that I'd rather forget about.
We all have those at
Yes,
some
we
point.
do.
Well, we want to dive into the music because I know a lot of folks are anxious to get the party started here. Holiday weekend. And the first tune that you wanted to play from this record was Asa Jones Blues. Is there anything you want to say about the song before we take a listen to it?
Well, I picked this, record, and this particular song is just one of the songs that I've written that I actually really like. It was one of the first songs that I had written a short book, a terrible book, unreadable book. But I'd written that, and then when I realized that I'm not going to be, much of a writer, I mined it for song ideas, and this was one of the main songs that came out of it. One of the ones that I was kind of the happiest with.
Nice.
Excellent. All right, well, we can ask about the plot line and all the other stuff in that book. Now, you've piqued my curiosity. We can ask about that later, but let's give it a listen. This is Charlie Parr, Asa Jones Blues, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Aces in the alley picking change up off the ground. Boys behind the liquor store drop their money all around. He's on his hands and knees in the garbage in the snow, picking up the pennies by my 40 in the store. So lay him down, lay him down, lay him down, down, down. Lay him down, lay him down. Boys, you got Asa Jones Blues. Frank's behind the counter selling cigarettes and beer. Well, yeah, not the Asa, get your fat ass out of here. You wanna get a drink, leave my customers alone. You wanna get drunk, you're gonna have to get there on your own. So lay 'em down, lay 'em down, lay 'em down, down, down. Lay 'em down, lay 'em down. You got Asa Jones Eddie's in his room with his head against the glass. Looks like the only survivor of a horrible plane crash. He weighs 90 pounds, wet or dry, never shaves his face. Pays $60 a month for his room and he never leaves the place. So lay him down, lay him down, lay him down, down, down. Lay him down, lay him down. Oh, you got Asa Jones Well, Earl's underneath the porch of that ramshackle house, like Billy Gold Gruff who come out to cuss and shout. He wears a woman's coat that he found down in the trash. His pockets full of rags, his stock stuffed with contraband. Lay him down, boys. Lay him down, down, down. Lay him down, lay him down. You got Asa Jones Well, there's behind the liquor store looking for money in the snow, panhandling the patrons till Frank comes out the door. He got a bat held in his hand and he lays it out of his head, cussing him out and then notices that he's dead. Lay him down, lay him down, lay him down, down, down. Lay him down, lay him down. Oh, you got Asa Jones Blues. Well, Frank throws the body in the dumpster of a drugstore 2 doors down and wipes the bat off with his shirt. Sees nobody hang around. Back at the store, he tells Ace to take a 40 on the house. He gives him the shirt off of his back. He says, now get out. So lay him down, lay him down, lay him down, down, down. Lay him down, boy, you got Asa Jones. Well, the police caught up with Ace about 7 blocks away. Girl's blood on his shirt, he couldn't think of a thing to say. Took the violin in his hand and broke it on the ground. He waved it in the air and then laid Big Ace down. Lay him down, boy, lay him down, down, down. Lay him down, lay him down. You got Asa Jones
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That was Charlie Parr from his 2002 album Criminals and Sinners. That was Asa Jones's Blues. And as Charlie said, setting up the song, originally it started off as a story, a longer story that he ended up mining for a song. And I would love to know, Charlie, yeah, Tony was wondering this too, kind of tell us a little bit about this backstory and what inspired the story that's in this song.
Yeah, I mean, the story was basically about a homeless man who had been murdered, and then another man who had been framed for the murder. And so Asa Jones is the man who gets framed and then killed himself, or he gets killed. Um, a song called King Earl is got to do with the man who's murdered in the first place. There's a song called Cheap Wine, which is about the man who kills Earl and frames another kid for it. And then there's another song called Public Record Rag, which is kind of the ending of the whole thing. And in the book, it was just a lot of, kind of muddled up details about all this kind of stuff. And
what great fodder for songwriting. I mean,
Yeah.
I've always thought of your lyrics as like just so literary, and this makes total sense now that you mentioned that you're a writer. So I think that's really cool.
I'm not. I mean, I sent the manuscript off to a friend of mine, who actually is a writer, and he said, "Ooh, don't do that anymore. That wasn't very good." And so I find that, but my songwriting style is still basically, that's what it is. I write out stories that I think would be interesting to have a song about, and then I kind of, start working on, fitting that story into whatever kind of musical framework that I've been working on. So.
Yeah, and it's neat though that you have like a whole sort of trilogy with these same characters, and it would be interesting to see. I don't know if when you think of your albums these days, if you structure the albums thinking of these stories hanging together, or if it's just kind of whatever you're happening to write at the time. But yeah, I'd love to see sort of a collection of all of these songs sequentially together with the same characters.
And well, and Matt chimed in and said, I've been curious if Cheap Wine was written about Frank from Asa Jones Blues. Now I know. And that exactly. So I think to your point there, Ellen, I think this will be one of those deals where, like, there'll be a Wikipedia page somewhere where all the fans will be like piecing together Charlie Parr songs to map out the entire story, and it will that was actually his plan all along. The book is written, and we're just going to get it in drops.
Yeah.
But we appreciate hearing from you, Matt, and we appreciate hearing from all of you. So many of our good friends are out there today. We saw Adam Kiesling saying hello, one of our past guests, and Gary Kobus, and we have Mr. Chris Jetner and John, who mentioned that. What did he say? He helped put CD covers together at shows in Duluth and glued on the artwork. I love it. I mean, that's exactly why we hang out and talk about music, because that's where the stuff comes from. It starts in a book. It starts with a glue stick and a piece of plastic, and we love hearing from you. So keep the comments coming, and definitely get your questions in here for Charlie too.
Yeah, for sure. And also, if you want to check out, again, all these different songs from these different albums that trace these characters and these stories, you can go to Charlie Parr's Bandcamp page, and you can get this album and a whole bunch of others, including the one with Cheap Wine and all of that. So you can follow those stories there. I did notice, Charlie, so that song, I think, was that just guitar and washboard on that track?
Yeah.
And who was that playing? Was that Mickle or?
That was Mickle. Yeah,
Mickle Backman.
2002, in a studio in the hillside in Duluth that Mark Lindquist had managed to get for us. It was usually occupied by a Duluth band called Ballyhoo, and they gave us time there. It was a really nice studio, actually. It was for being kind of a basement storefront kind of thing. It was really comfortable, and I enjoyed recording there very much.
Nice.
And how did you hook up with Mickle? For those of us here in the Twin Cities area, we know him as this amazing percussionist, and he had so many interesting textures to music. But I've always been curious about where where your two worlds collided.
I worked with Mickle at the Harbor Light Shelter, the homeless shelter in Minneapolis. He was my boss for a little while, if I remember correctly, but we hung out together all the time at work. And then started to, hang out together a lot when, after work, and just became really, really, really close friends, and still remain really close friends. But I was playing music with another friend of mine who played harmonica, and Mikkel would be over at the house, and we'd be drinking some beers, and put the empties back in the case so you could return them for the deposit, and then Mikkel would start playing on those empties with a couple of pencils, and I ended up buying him a washboard, because it didn't seem, practical to like haul a bottle, a case of empties around. If we
Plus,
to
you could
play a
probably
show
get some
anyway.
money for those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're worth money. It's not, but so he's got a hold of I got him a washboard at the Steeple People thrift shop.
Oh yeah.
We got a
On Lindale.
we got a gig at the coffee gallery next door to that, and kind of went from there.
Very cool.
Excellent. So that's a cool piece of local music history that Charlie Parr is responsible for Mikkel playing washboard. So, and that's what he's probably best
Right.
known for now. That's great. And tell us about when you recorded this album. Were you just recording live together? Everything mic'd together?
Yeah, everything was live. Mark didn't have like a lot of fancy microphones, so I think we had a couple of 57s and a 58, and that was pretty much it. And, Mikkel and I hadn't had a lot of experience recording anyway, so recording live was kind of the only way that I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I've never really learned anything else. So right up until the very last record I recorded this year, it's always been live, whether it's been in a studio or not. It's been, live to the tape.
It's a very
But we did
appropriate
have
for this.
we had access to a beautiful 16-track 2-inch tape machine, or maybe it was it was 24-track 2-inch tape machine. Really fancy machine. We used a track off of that, but still, it was nice to. It was
Nice to know you
have
had
it on
23
tape.
other options. Yeah.
Right. Well, one track's all you need.
Yeah, if it's the right track, that's for sure. Well, let's speaking of tracks, let's get another one fired up so we can hear some more music. I know folks are jonesing for it. And the next track you picked was Lowdown. Is there anything you want to say before we dive in?
No, this one is kind of in the same vein as Asa Jones, but without the backstory.
All right. Well, let's give it a listen. This is Charlie Parr, Lowdown, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Well, Lowdown, he come from Memphis town. Now walking them streets, baby, up and down. Now Lowdown had him a place downtown where the women would come from miles around and say, Lowdown, you wanna dance for a while? He said with his mouth, shake his can all the while. Lowdown called him sweetie pie, called him naughty guy, called him all the time. He said, never gonna see my home again, never gonna see my home again.
right, Lowdown from Charlie Parr from his 2002 release Criminals and Sinners. And that's the album we are revisiting today on the Back Catalog Listening Party. If you just tuned in, this is the show where we invite different guest artists on to join us every week to revisit old records. We listen to them together, talk about the songs, and we want to hear from you. So if you have questions for Charlie Parr, our guest today, feel free to throw them in the comments. Nice to see Bev joining us. Also, I saw earlier that Cheryl Hall and Dakota Dave are tuned in from the road. So Dakota Dave, another past guest here on Back Catalog Listening Party, and Charlie, a musician's musician. And actually it's appropriate that I saw Dakota Dave was tuned in because that song had a kind of reminded me of a lot of music that Dakota Dave does with that sort of like old vintage, like 1920s kind of sound. I'd love to hear about sort of some of your musical influences and how you came to play the mixture of music that you do, different kinds of roots music.
Oh, that's a long list. And Dakota Dave Hull would definitely be near the top of that list. When I dropped out of high school in 1981, and I moved to Minneapolis, kind of in the couple of years or so following that, and I had found a room in a rooming house on the West Bank, and I had a route that I followed. On Thursdays, I would walk downtown to the Times bar on Nicollet, so I could see Dave Ray and Tony Glover play. Fridays, just around the corner at the 400 bar, I'd squeeze myself in between a wall and the jukebox and watch Willie Murphy did solo piano sets every Friday at that time. Saturday, was just there was so many people playing. Dakota Dave would play sometimes at the New Riverside Cafe, or Pete Rikus would play there. A lot of amazing guitar players I got to go see, and then Sunday night I would see Spider John play at the Viking Bar, and for a while that happened every week, and that's what I did. And Phil Haywood, and just that list is long, and those are all guitar players that I got to go see in person, and people like Dakota Dave, they were just very, very gracious and supportive. I was humbled by being able to talk to these folks and hear what they heard, and then go find records that they recommended. Dakota Dave's radio show on KFAI was a treasure trove, of music that I should be listening to that I might not have caught. Because when I was younger and I was listening to a lot of music from my dad's record collection. Of course, that ends at some point. So you go to the library, and that ends at some point. It's a well that doesn't have a bottom, and it still doesn't have a bottom. So I listened to those guys. I was lucky enough to be able to go see those people play. In addition to listening to blues and folk music from whenever, name a point in history. So.
Yeah. And well, it's so appropriate that you say that you kind of have this route of music that you listen to going through the West Bank and parts of Minneapolis, seeing all these living legends perform live. It seems appropriate too that now, often when you play in the Twin Cities, you often are revisiting the West Bank to play, the Cedar Cultural Center, or I know coming up you're going to be at Palmer's Bar, which is another legendary joint. You'll be playing the first 2 Sundays of June, and they've revamped their outdoor patio, so you'll be there, so folks in the Twin Cities can check out Charlie playing live. And I would say, and probably a lot of people tuned in today would say, that you are that next generation of the guitar players that people want to come see live. So it's very inspiring. And for those guitar players, I'm sure folks would want to know, what kind of guitar were you playing on this recording?
Well, I've had the same main guitar for a long time. It was a late 90s National Delphi that I still have. It's just a little more beat up now. But that was primarily the guitar that was on that recording, and has been primarily the guitar on almost all the recordings since then.
Mm-hmm.
I played it at a show just this last week. So.
I love that. Well, those nationals last a long time, have a
Well,
long
they're made
shelf
out
life.
of steel, yeah.
I
They
know.
don't give up.
And do you play with picks usually?
At that point, no, I was not. I was playing bare-fingered and developed some really good calluses. At some point around 2007, 8, I developed a disorder called focal dystonia, and it made it really difficult for me to play with all of my fingers. And so I was reduced to playing with my forefinger and my thumb, which, you know, I had a lot of inspiration from guitar players like Mance Lipscomb, Booker White, the Reverend Gary Davis, you know, all played with those 2 digits. And I started using picks at that time because my hand was so weak that I couldn't get the kind of tone out of the guitar that I wanted. You know, resonator guitars are dynamic instruments, and as you play harder, as you play softer, you get a lot of different tonal variations. And I found that I was weak in my hand, and I couldn't get those variations anymore because I couldn't play hard. I could only play soft. So I started using picks, and I still do now. I use picks too.
Yeah, well, it's funny because there's a lot of guitar players don't use picks, and I remembered that you at least played with picks now because I remember we played a gig together in Duluth a few years back where I had accidentally, this is a major banjo player's faux pas, I left my picks at home somehow, and it's the only time it's ever happened. But thankfully, Duluth, a musician's town, not only people found, I was able to, of course, borrow a capo and a tuner, which were the other 2 things. So again, big problem for a banjo player. But Charlie, you were on the bill that night, and you had you loaned me your picks, so which was very kind, because loaning someone your picks is, it's a very personal,
intimate, intimate possession.
So thank you. I appreciate that you play with picks. And
anytime you need them, you can use them now.
Oh, well, I would never take them from you while you're performing, because pretty much, I would just want to watch you play. And folks out there joining us, Dave also said, Charlie, you're still the best. And, we'd agree with that. So we're so happy to have you here to talk about this older record, which, again, folks might not be as familiar with. But as you said, you've put out a lot of records over the years. And what made you, again, choose this one? Is it because it was your first, or what made you this be the record you wanted to talk about?
I think it was the first one I felt like was the first time I really took it seriously enough to think carefully about what I was doing, but also because I had come into a way of songwriting that I felt really was my way, and it's not changed since then. The 2 songs that we heard are still in my set list a lot. I think Lowdown I play at almost every set. I'm not saying it's a great song or anything, but it's just a song that I feel represents me really well. And I'm not bragging on this record so much as I'm just satisfied that this is out there. I'm happy enough that with it that I actually had it repressed in vinyl some years ago. And,
ooh. So are there vinyl copies available too if people order it on Bandcamp?
No, those are gone.
Those are gone. But you can get it on CD or the digital version for sure. And I will
CDs,
say,
no.
okay.
There's no physical copies of it left.
So just digital, but you can still get the audio, the high fidelity audio available that way.
I mean, I think if you look on Discogs, every once in a while they show up there. So.
And Matt said, referring to Lowdown, I believe, it definitely is a great song, one of my favorites. And then John said, can we have Charlie back and listen to King Earl next. And, we have a lot of guests that we've had that we want to have back and who have big, deep catalogs like you, like Dave. So we'll definitely work on that. But today we are revisiting this album, Criminals and Sinners, and I'd love to dig into your next track. The next one is Song for Loren B. Is there anything you want to say about this before we dive in?
Well, this is it's definitely another. It's not really a story song actually. This is a composite. Kind of. I was working, in this team of people that did outreach to people who were dealing with homelessness, and learning a lot about myself at the time, and this is composed of sketches of more made up than real incidents that might be composites of a lot of other incidents kind of jammed together. But it's not really about anything so much as it's about that situation, I guess.
I thought I'd share for those of you who are watching. It was cool. We were sent some images of looks like the original lyrics written for this. Is that what we're looking at here, Charlie?
Well, yeah.
And I see there's a Loren B, and then there's a scribbled out name, which I love. And there's other little edits in here. And this is, again, for people who are into music and its history. There's margin notes over here. I noticed that this was some stuff that you have on your website. And I think for people who are big fans of yours and big fans of the writing process in general, I think this is really cool that you shared this with us.
The website, my friend Ryan in Madison, he does the website, and he wanted to post lyrics kind of archivally. And at the time, I didn't have any way to type out lyrics and send them to him. So I mailed him, a manila envelope stuffed with the actual lyrics and just said, look, here they are. I don't know if you can.
This is you on paper.
And so he just scanned them and put them on the website. I think he might still have the original copies because I said, I know the songs now. I really don't need to follow the lyric sheets.
So if we see them on eBay, we know it's Ryan's fault that he's put them up there.
I hope he does, and if he does, I hope he makes some money because I don't think I've ever really compensated him well for doing the website.
Awesome. Well, let's listen to the final draft here of Song for Loren B. This is Charlie Parr on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Charlie Parr with Song for Loren B, and a lot of folks saying how beautiful it was, including Kate and also Terry Walsh of the Belfast Cowboys, one of our other previous guests on the show, saying how much she was enjoying that, and John as well. And I feel like that shows more of sort of your folkier side, and I think a lot of folks, when they think of Charlie Parr, they think of the more foot stomping blues side, which of course you have, but this shows a kind of softer acoustic kind of vibe. And was this a different guitar you were using on this one?
Yeah, this was a regular acoustic guitar. I may have even borrowed this.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, at the time I only had the National, but yeah, there was a few songs on a regular wooden guitar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful sound. And I would love to ask about the artwork. I don't know if we can pull that back up, but Criminals and Sinners, the name of this record, we're revisiting today on the back catalog listening party with our guest Charlie Parr. And I'd love to know about the story of this artwork and who did it.
Well, she's a local Duluth artist. Her name is Sarah Heimer. And, she was kind of friends with Mark, and I met her, and she had come to some shows, and I liked her art. Duluth at the time, well, still, but at that time anyway, I was up there more, and there was just a lot of artists up there, and they were all showing their art. Kind of, we had opportunities to get together and do kind of multimedia shows with music and art, puppet theater, just a lot of stuff happening in Duluth. She was, hers was one of the arts that I admired, and so Mark asked her to, create a cover, and she did. She did both the front and the back cover of the record. I was always been really pleased with the artwork for this record.
And yeah, I love it because the pumpkin patch, and I like that the people, you don't know, with a name like Criminals and Sinners, you don't know what they're up to, hanging out in that pumpkin patch.
Right.
Well, if you just tuned into the back catalog listening party, we're talking with Charlie Parr. He's joining us from his van, parked in Austin, Minnesota, outside his mom's house. Of course, based in Duluth. And I know this year you haven't hit the road the way you normally do. Normally, you're pretty busy out there playing. Is it starting to feel good getting to play some live shows again?
Yeah, it is. I was unusually lucky throughout this experience in that Earthrider Brewing up in Superior, Wisconsin. Pretty much, early last summer, they set up a big outdoor stage and started like hosting Duluth musicians who didn't have anywhere to go. And I started playing there. I played there pretty much all fall, right up till Thanksgiving. So I still got to play. I still got to perform. And I'm still doing shows. I think I'm doing a show there next Wednesday. It does feel nice to be able to start getting back out, and I've got some shorter tours kind of coming up. I've done a few things already. And it feels good. Although, this year I've had a chance to, practice and write, and I recorded an entire record this year over in Cleveland, Minnesota at Eric Koskinen's studio, and it was a really great experience. And so some things happened that I was very happy with.
Yeah, and I hear that this new record's coming out on Smithsonian Folkways.
Yeah,
pretty exciting.
It'll be out on Smithsonian Folkways in July, I believe. The vinyl won't be ready until September, but the regular release will be, I think, in July.
Excellent. Wonderful. And if folks want to keep tabs on Charlie, they can go to his website, charlieparr.com, I believe, and follow him on the socials as well, and keep tabs on where you can catch Charlie performing live. But right now we're going to dig into at least one more tune here. And this one that you picked to feature from this 2002 release is Annie Melton. Is there anything you want to say about Annie?
This song was written from the liner notes of the first Doc Watson record.
Oh.
He does a version of Tom Dooley on that record. it's a fantastic record. But in the liner notes, it's in under Tom Dooley in the liner notes, they talk about Doc Watson's grandmother was acquainted with Annie Melton, who was one of Tom Dooley's girlfriends, the one that didn't get killed. And so it was related that Doc Watson's grandmother went to visit Annie Melton near the end of her life, and she said that there was flames all around the edges of her bed from the fires of hell, because she had actually murdered Laura Foster and let Tom Dooley hang for it, which I have no idea about the veracity of that story, but I thought it was such a great story that kind of the song kind of burbled out at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of amazing that wasn't one of the songs. I mean, this is why it pays to read, right?
Yes.
Those liner notes that's pretty amazing.
Well, that's partly why we do this show, is so that we can resurrect the liner notes, maybe that were never written for this record, and now everybody has that bit of history as well. So let's give the song a listen. This is Annie Melton from Charlie Parr here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Lay down your head and you're going home. You should have been gone long ago. You should have been gone long ago. When Tom walked back from the Civil War, there waited two women at his door. There waited two women by his door. Killed poor Laura, buried at night, a shallow grave on the mountainside, a shallow grave on the mountainside. Love's jealous way, time took the fall, headed out for Arkansas, headed out for Arkansas.
Beautiful. Charlie Parr with Annie Melton from his 2002 release, Criminals and Sinners, which we have been revisiting today on the Back Catalog Listening Party with Charlie joining us from his van parked in Austin, Minnesota. And thank you all for tuning in. And yeah, folks, loving the music and loving seeing your face again and out and about. And yeah, that song is so great, and it's hard to believe that came from just the story of the liner notes.
Well, I'm hearing it differently now, and I really appreciate this. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but like I feel like liner notes that you got the song from, and liner notes that are just missing so much in today's music. You know, I'm like that not being able to get these stories, and I'm just so glad that we're here today to share those with us, Charlie. Thank you so much.
I was a deep listener when I started listening to music, you know, and I was one of those people that sit there, read everything. I'd read the you know, all the little numbers, anything on the sleeve I could find, and read it again and again and again, stare at the photographs while I listen to the music. I was, you know, and I still kind of, you know, have that about me. I like listening to, you know, you know, LPs because it's tactile. I can get my hands on the cover and sit and stare at it. And, you know,
you're our people,
music,
Charlie.
I haven't figured out how to download the notes yet. So.
I wish some tech company would come up with a way to make that part of the experience, because I feel like we lose so much, you know, and that's why this show exists. Really, this is our our reaction to the lack of liner notes, and I'm so glad that you're on the Smithsonian Folkways label now, because I mean they're known for robust
great
liner notes. I mean they probably have an anthropologist over at your house and a whole team of people.
I was very pleased with the process. I actually last week I got the proofs for the notes. My friend Abraham Smith, who is a poet living in Utah, he wrote the bulk of the liner notes, and then I wrote kind of all the annotations, you know, and the way they put it all together and presented it, it really is humbling. It's an amazing experience.
That's wonderful. And again, that's coming out summer. And if you also want to dig into some of Charlie's other recordings and get your hands on some of the vinyl or other copies, you can go to his Bandcamp page. And for folks who are regular listeners and like to tip the artists and all that stuff, you can name your price at Bandcamp, so you can get the music, but you can also throw in a little extra for Charlie, which is great because we want to hear a lot more Charlie Parr music, and whether that's on his old Nashville guitar or an acoustic, or I have to ask, because you're talking with two banjo players today, Charlie. You have played banjo in the past. I know that some stuff with your hand made that a little challenging, but are you picking up the banjo at all these days?
Well, as it happens, you know, I hadn't played banjo for many years because of that. And then recently, some friends of mine in Colorado, they built banjos under the name of Rooster built banjos, Cloverlick Banjo Shop, and they built a banjo for me.
Oh,
and
nice.
I thought this is perfect. This is my way to kind of figure out how to deal with this instrument that I loved and I missed playing it. So it's nice. It's a fretless, open back.
Awesome.
Beautiful banjo, and I'm working on it. I don't know how long it's going to be before I can actually feel confident enough to bring it to the stage, but it's gratifying to sit at home and make those sounds, you know.
Well, a lot of people don't know that kind of before the Earl Scruggs style and even the claw hammer, I mean, there was a lot of this two-finger stuff.
And Doc Watson did a lot of that, actually.
Yeah, and you mentioned those are the fingers you're using primarily, and there's actually some old books from like the 19th century and stuff that have songs written out in two-finger style.
Alan probably knows more about this than I do, Alan, but I believe it was called parlor style. Guys like Charlie Poole played that style. Roscoe Holcomb played with two fingers, and so yeah, there's definite touchstones out there.
Wonderful.
And is that kind of how you're approaching it?
It is, yeah, it is, because the style I had played before was kind of a I call it fake frailing,
Okay.
and it was really hard on my hand. But now I'm kind of adapting my guitar picking style to the banjo.
Awesome.
Very
Well,
cool.
even more to look forward to.
And it makes sense too because you have such a rhythmic style to your playing, and banjo being a wait to see what you come up with next on the banjo. We also have another question. Obviously, as we said earlier, you're joining us from your van parked in Austin, Minnesota. But you are also a bike rider, and I remember once seeing you bike on your way to a gig in Austin to the Paramount Theater. And Dave asked, "Do you still have that Springer Stingray bicycle?"
Yeah. Oh, of course. As a matter of fact, I've been out on it already this year. My nephew Judd, he built that bike for me. Except for it's got a 26-inch Springer on a 20-inch frame, so it's definitely got a rake to it. But I put a 42-inch sissy bar on the back so I wouldn't fall off the back all the time.
Nice.
But I love riding it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if you've ever dipped your toes into the into bike touring, but there are musicians that go all across the country biking with their instruments. But I don't know if hauling a steel guitar and a banjo might be tough.
Yeah, especially on a 20-inch bike. I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly.
It's only got one speed,
Exactly. That would make it hard to tour outside of the plains for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks to everyone for tuning in. Folks loving seeing your face, Charlie, hearing the stories behind these songs, and this has been so much fun to kick off our holiday weekend with you, listening to this music. And it's been a long time since I've heard some of these songs on the record version, so this has been really fun for me.
Yeah, they sound great, and you can download these in high resolution on his Bandcamp page, and like Ellen mentioned, you can kind of pay what you want on Bandcamp. So if you like what you heard today and you want to throw a little something in Charlie's tip jar, you can do it right there on Bandcamp, and you get all this great music in high resolution. So we highly encourage you to head on over to his Bandcamp page, which we have scrolling, and in the comments, charlieparrmusic.bandcamp.com.
And we also see that one of our listeners, Matt, said, "I'll build you a trailer, Charlie." So you have an offer. If you're ever brave enough to go anywhere on your one-speed bike, you have someone who will build you a trailer. And Eliza Blue, one of our other past guests, joining us as well from South Dakota. And thank you all for tuning in. If you liked the episode, then like it on YouTube, give it the thumbs up, and the bots will direct more people to Charlie's music, and we want that to happen. And Charlie actually has a new video up on YouTube, which you can check out as well. And if you like this show, then subscribe to the channel, and you can be notified about our future shows. And I can't remember who's next week, but I'm sure it's someone great. We have a great schedule. Betty Sue from Austin, Texas. One of my favorite singer-songwriters. She'll be joining us next week. And you can find out if you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And there's a lot of people that make this show happen, mainly the artists who come and join us, like Charlie, and you all for listening. But our Patreon supporters, these folks actually pony up money every month to pay for the platform so that we can do this. Penny, Ann, Alinda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Galen, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, Jocelyn, Court, and maybe you, if you want to join. And for those of you who are top tier patrons, we're going to be actually having a little after party with Charlie. Charlie's going to stick around and join us on Zoom for a little, so folks can ask more questions.
One of the songs we didn't get to, we'll be
we're going to listen to an extra song, and that's the kind of stuff you can get when you subscribe to our Patreon, is invites to special events and parties. And
but thank you so much for being here, all of you listening, and Charlie. What a treat it was. I was talking to Charlie before the show. I had got an opportunity to interview him in April of 2020, when all of this lockdown and the pandemic just started, and everything just was, there were so many questions, and there was so much unknown, and it just feels so good to be able to chat with you again on the other side, knowing you're back in the van and heading out there and making more music and with a banjo. So I couldn't. I mean, everything's coming up, Millhouse.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me on the show. I really do appreciate it.
Well, this is a treat, and we thank you all for joining us, because, again, the whole reason we do this is to connect with our favorite artists, but also to have you guys join in the conversation. So it wouldn't be the same without you, and we're grateful you're all here from Illinois, Texas, Connecticut, Nashville, all over the place, and, of course, here in Minnesota. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back next week for another edition of the Back Catalog Listening Party. And, again, for those of you who are our Patreon supporters, go to that Zoom link, and we'll be joining you in a minute.
The party continues, and for everybody else, we'll see you next week.